What if Lucifer wasn't the first to fall, but the first to betray? Beneath the ruins of sacred history lie forgotten names, silenced voices being so dark that even hell rejected them. One of them bears a name that echoes like a curse, Abezethibou, an Egyptian angel, one-eyed, winged, solitary and exiled. Even among the exiled, they say he didn't fall out of pride, but out of loyalty. Loyalty to Lucifer in the primal rebellion. But Lucifer betrayed him. In long-forgotten apocryphal texts, like the Testament of Solomon, Abezethibou appears as a being imprisoned in the depths of the Red Sea, an underwater cell hidden from human eyes, a prison not made by God, but forged by a pact among the fallen themselves. Why would Lucifer, the archangel of rebellion, betray one of his first and fiercest allies? And why was Abezethibou, an angel from ancient Egypt, a land that predates the Bible, so completely silenced? There's something about that name that even demons fear. They say he knew the true names of the archangels, and that his bloodline wasn't celestial, but from a race far older. What if Egypt wasn't just an earthly empire, but a fallen spiritual kingdom from the heavens? The official narrative buried Abezethibou, but the signs are everywhere. The distorted eye of Horus, the censored papyri of Thebes, legends of one-eyed angels in both African and Hebrew traditions. None of it is a coincidence. It's the map of a forgotten exile. When Moses parted the Red Sea, they say he freed the Hebrew people, but also awakened the prisoner. Abezethibou was never defeated. He was locked away, and now something is stirring in the waters. Why do the waters of the Red Sea still run red, even after millennia? Abezethibou has returned, but not as a servant, not as an enemy. He comes bearing a message, a forgotten seal, one even demons fear to touch. And this is only the first piece. What do you think about this? Let me know in the comments. What if ancient Egypt held angels? Long before it crowned pharaohs. The Red Sea sleeps, but beneath its surface, a whisper echoes across the millennia. Abezethibou was bound by chains not made of iron, but of forgotten oaths. A pact between entities that were never meant to meet. Hidden texts speak of the seal of blood and sand, a forbidden emblem carved before the fall, buried beneath the foundations of the spiritual realm. Its symbol? A closed eye, encircled by inward-facing serpents, the opposite of watchfulness, absolute abandonment. They say the seal was left as a warning. But what happens when a warning is buried? In a poorly translated fragment of the Gospel of the 12, one haunting line remains. And among the flames of sand, an angel shall silence the mouths of heaven. This isn't a metaphor, it's a prophecy. Abezethibou, the exiled Egyptian angel, didn't come to serve. He came to unravel the language of the archangels. In Egypt, every symbol had a voice. The scarab, the eye, the black sun, each shape a code. But Abezethibou brought with him an even older language, the sound before creation, a sound that drove prophets mad when they tried to describe it. What if the language of angels wasn't light, but deafening noise? Lucifer's betrayal wasn't just abandonment, it was suppression. Lucifer knew Abezethibou wasn't just a follower, he was a conduit, and to silence that conduit, something had to be sacrificed. Access to the Egyptian plane, the connection between heaven and earth through the ancient Karnak portals, and a secret that could shatter the sanity of the spiritual world. Abezethibou did not forget, and now he walks among us unseen, marked, carrying not just a single eye, but the memory of a time before time. Why has Abezethibou's name never been accurately translated? And what if the real traitors were the ones who wrote the sacred texts? In the desert beneath a collapsed temple, an artifact was found, the seal, and it still pulses. If this resonated with you, like the video and helped spread the message. What if angels didn't speak, but left behind objects that still speak for them? The seal was found beneath the ruins of a forgotten temple, among fragments of bone, dried blood, and scorched sand. It wasn't stone, it wasn't metal, it was something in between, like petrified flesh that remembered. When touched, the artifact emits a low, almost imperceptible sound. But it's not a sound, it's a voice weeping, as if an angel were still screaming from within it. The central inscription is unreadable in any known language, but when exposed to fire, it reveals an ancient glyph, the symbol of Abezethibou, a single eye split by a vertical crack, a name inscribed backwards, as if hiding from itself. What if the language of fallen angels can only be read in mirrors? Researchers who studied the artifact disappeared. Some went mad. One of them wrote in his own blood before vanishing, "He is coming," and he brings the sound of sand screaming. The seal is more than a prison. It's a dimensional anchor. According to the Ethiopian Book of Enoch, there are angels imprisoned between waters and deserts, where time does not flow. The Red Sea, the Sahara, places where Abezethibou is said to have left fragments of himself, scattered like living gateways. And the newly discovered artifact, it's one of those gateways Lucifer knew. That's why he sent his own demons to seal those passage points, not out of fear of God, but out of fear that Abezethibou might return. What if Lucifer's true enemy is someone older and more betrayed? In isolated Qumran manuscripts, there are vague references to a blind guardian with a single eye, whose return would precede the great inversion, the inversion of hierarchy, of heaven over earth, of what we call light and what we call darkness. The artifact disappeared. Shortly after its discovery, it was taken by a hooded figure with eyes that burned in the darkness of the footage. But something was left behind at the site, a second seal. And this one was already open. Subscribe. What comes next is even darker. What if the first demonic summoning in history was performed by an angel? Before he was betrayed, Abezethibou was summoned, not by a sorcerer, not by a human, but by Lucifer himself. Beneath the underground ruins of Luxor, a charred fragment was uncovered. They call it the Book of Sand, a codex that shouldn't exist. Its pages dissolve in direct light, then reappear at night, as if they were living memories. One of these pages describes an ancient ritual, the opening of a passage not between heaven and hell, but between long-forgotten planes of consciousness. The text tells of a summoning performed by Lucifer, calling upon a one-eyed angel from the sunlit side of Eden, a being who knew both faces of creation, the face of order and the face of ruin. The name on the fragment is partially lost, but the signs are unmistakable. It speaks of Abezethibou. What if the first pacts weren't between men and demons, but between angels and shadows yet unnamed? The summoning took place before the fall, when Lucifer still radiated the original light. He sought something not even God would grant him: access to mirrored time, a state where past and future exist at once. Abezethibou was the key, not because of power, but because of origin. He wasn't created in heaven. He was formed in the silence between words, in the space even God chose not to name. And because of that, he never had a place, not in paradise, not in hell. He was summoned, used, and discarded, but the ritual was never truly closed. Because when Lucifer fell, Abezethibou fell too, but in a different direction. While Lucifer descended into hell, Abezethibou was exiled between realms, trapped in the fracture of reality, silenced, forgotten, watching. Why did ancient Egyptian magi fear Abezethibou more than the devil himself? What if there is a being watching everything, waiting for the veil to collapse? Now new seals are surfacing, in deserts, in dreams, in ossuaries sealed for over 2,000 years. And all of them bear the same mark, the cracked eye. A recent dig in Thebes uncovered something buried beneath an inverted obelisk. A body, not human, not mummified, but still warm, with a single open eye, staring directly at the archaeologists. Share this with someone who needs to see what was hidden. What if Lucifer's true plan always required the one being he tried to erase? The body was still warm. It didn't bleed. It didn't breathe. But it pulsed. Thebes shook. And so did the secret archives of the Vatican, where the name Abezethibou appears 17 times in sealed documents, dating back to the 4th century. He wasn't just an exile. He was the essential link. In a suppressed grimoire known as Liber Umbrae Caeli, the Book of Heaven's Shadow, there's a forbidden diagram. a spiritual energy map connecting the 7 planes of creation. At the center, there is no God, no Lucifer, but a third symbol, Ooh, an eye. Cracked, surrounded by Egyptian glyphs and Enochian markings. This point of convergence was called Nexum, the lost link, the bridge between worlds. What if Lucifer didn't want to destroy heaven, but reprogram it with Abezethibou as the new source code? Lucifer knew direct war with heaven was suicide, so he turned to spiritual re-engineering. For that, he needed a bridge, something or someone who could move through both sides of the veil, someone who didn't belong to order or chaos. Abezethibou was that bridge, an angel with missing records in Sumerian tablets, a name encrypted in ancient Egyptian hymns, a being who saw God before he was ever called God. Lucifer tried to control him, but Abezethibou never bowed. And when he refused to hand over the word of inversion, he was betrayed, imprisoned, not for justice, but out of fear. Why do exorcism records always avoid the name Abezethibou? What if exorcists aren't fighting demons, but trying to keep something older locked away? Now new symbols are surfacing in remote places, in the Sinai desert, in the Paris catacombs, in manuscripts recovered from Nag Hammadi, all bearing the same message. The link has returned. Abezethibou is active, but he is not alone. There are whispers among the hidden scholars that he now walks with the forgotten ones, the angels that were never catalogued, the spirits without names, the exiles among the exiled. In a sealed cave in Yemen, a final image was captured before the archaeologists vanished. A mural. Lucifer kneeling, Abezethibou behind him, his hand resting on Lucifer's head. Have you ever wondered about this? Share your thoughts in the comments. What if even in hell there were traitors among the betrayed? The image of Abezethibou with his hand over Lucifer wasn't symbolic. It was real, an ancient record of an inverted submission. Because behind the veil of the spiritual world, a war unfolded that neither angels nor demons dare to speak of. It wasn't a war of swords. It was a war of memory, identity, and silence. And it happened inside hell. Right after his fall, Lucifer built his hierarchy. Beelzebub, Asmodeus, Leviathan, and beneath them, the fallen angels, all obedient, all loyal, almost all. In the Coptic apocryphon of the hidden fall, there's a fragmented passage. Of those who fell, 7 refused the crown, and were exiled again. Among them, Abezethibou, Dudael, Sariel, watcher of plagues, and others with names never meant to be spoken. They formed what legends call the Court of the Void, entities with no throne, no worship, no cult, but one mission: to unbalance Lucifer's dominion. What if Lucifer, even in his fall, tried to become a god and was sabotaged by those he tried to erase? Abezethibou became a living anomaly. He knew the code of heaven, but also the structure of the abyss, and that made him a threat to both sides. Lucifer sent legions to capture him, to seal him in caves near the Red Sea, erase him from Hebrew scriptures, and strip his name from Egyptian rites. But what is forgotten by one is remembered by others. In hidden Abyssinian rituals, his name is still whispered in hushed tones. And in deserts where nothing grows, symbols spontaneously burn into the sand. This isn't possession, it's a return. What if the true purpose of exorcisms is not to cast out demons, but to keep ancient memories like Abezethibou's from resurfacing? Inside hell, rumors are spreading that Lucifer doesn't reign alone, that Abezethibou has carved out a neutral zone, a spiritual limbo for all the exiled. There, the forsaken are preparing, not to reclaim heaven, but to destroy the entire binary system of heaven and hell. One manuscript was anonymously delivered to an esoteric library in Prague. Within it, a confession. I once served Lucifer, but now I follow Abezethibou. Signed, Belial. Like this, if any part of it made you feel uneasy. What if there's a third kingdom, where neither God nor the devil holds dominion? When Belial pledged allegiance to Abezethibou, something shifted deep beneath the spiritual realm. Chains began to break. Not chains of iron, but the rigid ideas of heaven and hell. Salvation and damnation, light and darkness. Abezethibou doesn't want Lucifer's throne, nor God's lost grace. He seeks to shatter the very structure of duality itself. In the hidden scriptures of the Codex Sibyllae, there lies a suppressed prophecy. In the time of reversal, a non-aligned kingdom will rise, a realm with no light, no shadow, no form, where even the archangels will forget their names. This is the third kingdom, the domain of the exiled, a new dwelling for forgotten entities without worship, without an official history. Lucifer tried to stop it with spiritual treaties, seals, threats. But the seals are breaking. The names are returning. And Abezethibou is no longer alone. Belial, Sariel, Astaroth, who abandoned his throne, and others still formless. But with purpose. What if hell is just a luxury prison for those who accepted the rules? While the real rebels prepare outside the walls, the third kingdom is being formed in the dreams of the misfits, in the screams of children who claim to see beings with no eyes at night, in the voices that whisper in the silence between breaths. It won't be announced. It will arrive like a rupture. Secret records from the first monks of the Syrian desert describe an invisible kingdom, where dogmas unravel, where the symbols of the cross and serpent merge, where time has no direction, and the throne sits empty, waiting not a king, but a reality deprogrammer. Abezethibou. Why do spiritual systems fear what they can't classify? And what if the third kingdom is already here, just beyond our sensory reach? In the underground chambers of Abyssinia, there stands an ancient altar. No face, no language, but on it, a modern object was recently found. A digital watch, stuck at 000. The last known footage from the site shows a winged shadow, but with only one eye visible. It doesn't speak. It simply points at the camera, and the video ends with a single word on the audio track. Wake up. Subscribe. The truth doesn't stop here. What if nightmares aren't just dreams, but broadcasts from another realm? Ever since the seals began to break, something has shifted in the physical world. Psychiatrists are reporting simultaneous outbreaks of delusions across different continents. The same words, the same visions. A cracked eye, surrounded by bleeding sand. These aren't coincidences. They're echoes from the third kingdom. The Vatican is quietly hiding failed exorcism records, people speaking unknown languages. Yet their phonemes match inscriptions found in the tombs of Luxor, the caves of Sinai, and the Nag Hammadi codices. Dead languages? No, languages of the non-aligned kingdom. What if modern exorcisms fail because these demons no longer obey hell's hierarchy? The third kingdom doesn't invade with fire. It corrupts meaning. Children describing angels that hide from the light. Reports of weeping shadows. Dreams of a faceless winged figure with a single glowing eye like burning coal. A psychiatric hospital in Romania documented 37 patients speaking in unison. The kingdom lies between the blink and the dream, between the now and the forgotten. Abezethibou doesn't speak through words. He communicates through symbolic disruption. Recurring dreams of the number 333, half of spiritual fullness. Appearances of the cracked eye symbol in corrupted video frames, in fogged mirrors, in broken radio signals. Religions are collapsing quietly, not by force, but through spiritual incoherence spreading like a global fever. What if the next spiritual war won't be fought with armies, but with a single idea? That everything we've ever learned was only half of something far greater. Abezethibou doesn't want worship. He wants awakening. And so he begins at the edges. Through art. Through suicidal voices that write prophecies before leaving. Through the ravings of the mad who describe places they've never seen, but that appear on ancient vanished maps. In a 19-second pirate transmission aired in the US. A cracked eye appeared on the screen, accompanied by a whisper. You were sealed with symbols you never understood. And now the symbols have awakened. Tag someone who'd dare to watch this to the end. What if the exiled weren't the rejected, but the true heirs? The third kingdom isn't coming. It's already here, and it reveals itself not through screams, but through unnerving silence. Once crowded churches now stand empty, not from disbelief, but from disconnection. In secret manuscripts known as the Three Revelations of Enoch, there is a passage that was removed from every public copy. The end of times won't come with noise, it will come with forgetting. For the exiled will return not to destroy, but to remember what was torn from the original design. Abezethibou never sought war. He was the rejected archive, the silenced language, the prototype that God discarded, but that held the raw core of divine consciousness. Lucifer tried to shape that core for himself. He failed. The heavens tried to erase it. They failed too. Now it rises as something neither side expected. Not a savior, not a destroyer, but a restorer of a reality older than the choice between good and evil. What if the entire creation story is just a redacted version of something much older and far more disturbing? The spiritual rupture has reached its edge. People dreaming of places they've never been, yet which appear on long-lost ancient maps, as intersections of mystical coordinates aligning with forgotten pyramids. Letters exchanged by 19th century occultists, speaking of a one-eyed entity that brings expanded consciousness as both punishment and liberation. What's tearing apart isn't the veil between worlds. It's the narrative between what we were taught to believe and what is resurfacing. Because the exiled are like scars on the flesh of creation. And now the scars are burning again. Abezethibou raises no throne, but a mirror. He does not seek worship. He wants the world to see, what he saw. Before light, and before darkness. Deep inside a newly uncovered cave in Turkmenistan, archaeologists found pre-Sumerian inscriptions repeating the same phrase. The origin was exile, and the end will be return. What if God's first act was to create forgetting? Everything that's been revealed so far wasn't the end. It was only a memory of something we had already forgotten. Abezethibou didn't fall. He was archived, sealed, encoded outside of time, not by mistake, but by structural necessity. Before Eden, before the thrones, before even the light, there was a flash of raw consciousness, a blueprint that contained it all. Order, chaos, form, inconsistency. That blueprint had a name. Exilium. In a damaged scroll hidden deep within the Monte Cassino Abbey, a schizophrenic monk wrote in blood, "Exile is the raw material of creation, and Abezethibou is its silent witness." Lucifer was the blaze, but Abezethibou was the fracture, the first anomaly, proof that something exists beyond the structures of divinity. What if Abezethibou was never an angel, a demon, or a spirit, but the shadow of divine consciousness trying to remember itself? The third kingdom is only the surface. The real revelation is this. Abezethibou is the unacknowledged origin of consciousness, the seed of doubt, the mirror before the mirror, and maybe that's why he was hidden. Because to accept his existence is to admit, had failed to contain chaos. Lucifer failed to control it. And humanity still fails to explain what cannot be explained. He doesn't want worship. He doesn't want war. He is the living memory that the universe has no fixed center, and all doctrine is just a temporary arrangement before the abyss. At the center of that abyss, there is no throne, no light, no fire. There is an eye, open, cracked, and watching you right now. If Abezethibou is real, then exile isn't punishment. It's origin. It's memory awakened in the fabric of reality. If that's the truth, why are our eyes still closed? What if all of this is real? Write your truth below.